Good morning, students. Today we'll have a class on international trade. So now today I'm going to summarize you about the theorem, Heckscher-Ohlin theorem, which you already learned. Let us know what this theorem predicts about. Heckscher-Ohlin theorem predicts the pattern of trade between countries based on their characteristics of the countries. What are those characteristics? So if a country has a capital abundant, it produces capital abundant, it uses available capital and produce commodities. If the country is labor intensive, utilizes more labor and produce the commodities. So let us look into this theorem. The Heckscher-Ohlin theorem predicts the pattern of trade between two countries, and the pattern is based on the available inputs. If it has a capital intensive goods, if it has a more abundant of capital, the country will export more capital intensive goods. If the country has more labor abundant, it produces labor intensive goods. So with this, keeping in this mind, we will look into the other factors. So now today we will have a discussion on Stöpler-Samuelson theorem. And this theorem, so whatever I am going to today explain, you can find this in your textbook, which I already said you could download from the net. I hope that you all downloaded that. So if you want to refer to this, you have to go to page number 196. There you can find this Stöpler-Samuelson theorem. So let us understand what this theorem discusses about. The Stöpler-Samuelson theorem is a theorem which tries to explain us the relationship between the changes in the output prices or the prices of the goods or the changes in factor prices. So which will increase or decrease the sale of commodities. So I'll just repeat once again. So in this theorem, Stöpler and Samuelson have taken would like to find a relationship between the changes in the prices of the commodities and the changes in the factor prices. The factor prices means all those factors which are used in producing the goods and commodities. If there is any change in the price of the commodity, we will going to have a change in the output of the price, or else if any change in the output of the price of the commodity, will have a change on the factor prices. So let us today discuss about this theorem. The theorem was originally developed to eliminate the issue of how tariffs would affect the income of workers and capitalists. So this theory basically discusses about distribution of income within a country. So this theorem is also much useful in trade liberalization. This theorem was used as a base to have a trade liberalization among the countries. So it supports liberalization of trade policies in international trade. So let us understand the theorem. What the theorem states? The theorem states that if the price of the capital intensive good rises for whatever the reason, then the price of capital will be used intensively in the industry and the price of this capital will also rise, while the wage of the labor will fall. So what it means? So let us understand like this. This theorem states, let us take two components to understand this theorem. The theorem states that imagine if a country has a capital intensive goods, it is manufacturing capital intensive goods like machineries. So like plant and machineries, imagine a country A produces plant and machineries. Now if the prices of this capital plant and machineries rises, so let us not get into the reason why the prices increase. So let us imagine if the price of these capital intensive goods which are manufactured, like you can you can understand what are those capital intensive goods means, where the goods are produced using capital goods, where there is more capital is used, and it is where less labor will be used in producing these commodities. Okay, so if the price of this capital intensive goods increases in the market, then automatically the price of the capital which was used in manufacturing these commodities in the industry will also rise. On the other side, the wages paid to the workers, those as the laborers who are working in the industry, their salaries will fail. Okay. So now let us understand with a small example. In a steel industry, if the price of a steel were to rise, and if the steel were capital intensive, if the steel is produced using capital intensive technology, the rental rate of the capital would rise, while the wage rate would fall. It means if let us take an example of a steel industry. If the steel industry manufactures steel, the steel which has been manufactured using capital intensive technology, if they are using capital intensive goods like machineries, their rent will obviously increase, and if the laborers are used in producing this steel, their wages will automatically fall. Okay, so similarly, if a country produces a commodity using labor intensive technology, if the price of these labor intensive goods are increasing means, so the laborers who have been engaged in producing these commodities, their wages will increase, and while the rent which is paid to the capital machineries equipments which were used would fall. So this is the what the Stupler-Samuelson theorem states about. Okay. So this theorem was later it was generalized by Ronald Jones, who constructed a magnification effect of prices in context of Haxian-Hoylein model. What is this magnification effect? The magnification effect means it is about allowing the prices, allowing the change in the prices of goods, both goods and commodities, and try to magnify means increasing the prices of these goods and commodities, like labor intensive goods, whether it may be labor intensive goods, whether it may be capital intensive goods. If the prices are increased to an extent, to a magnitude, so what is the effect of wage and rent which are utilized in manufacturing these commodities, what that magnitude of change will happen? So this can be analyzed, and this theorem propagates that there will be always a positive impact. If the capital intensive goods prices increases, automatically the capital intensive goods which were used, their utilities, their prices will also increase. Vice versa, the laborers' wages will decline. Imagine if an industry produces labor intensive goods, say like cotton, using labor as if it manufactures cotton. If the price of the cotton increases, automatically the wages paid to these laborers will also increase, and if those machineries which were used in producing these commodities, their value will gradually decline. So there will be less demand for this capital or the rent. We can take the rent paid to this capital machineries will decline. So this is about the theory. So now let us understand this theory with a small example. So let us understand this with a small example. Since the prices change in a country when trade liberalization occurs. Let us take this example under trade liberalization. What is trade liberalization? Trade liberalization means liberating the trade, freeing the trade, means utilizing the inputs which are found abundant in between two countries. The trade liberalization will promote to use those inputs which are in more quantity. So only if there is an abundant quantity of those inputs, based on this the country can take up its production. So, and since because of trade liberalization, you can also see that the prices will change in the country. So the change in the prices we can call it as a magnification effect. This magnification effect can be applied to yield an interesting and important result. A movement to free trade will cause a real return of a country's relatively abundant factor to rise. So as I said you that because of free trade, because of trade liberalization, the country will take up those production activities in which the country possesses those inputs which are in abundant in nature and which can be utilized for production. As the country start utilizing this abundant, which is the more available of a resource, that's called abundant, means in more quantity. This abundant quantity, the resource which is in abundant will be used for producing commodity, and obviously when a country start using this abundant factor for producing the goods, if the price of these goods increases, automatically the prices of the factor inputs will also increase, and all those scarce resources which were unutilized, their demand or the price will fall. So this is the main study of this theorem. So now let us understand this with an example. Let us take an example of United States and France are the two countries where there is a free trade which operates, and there is a abundant of two factors in these two countries. Let us look into it. If the United States has a capital abundant, there more capital is available in a large quantity, so the United States of America will take up the production of those capital abundant goods. Capital intensive goods are manufactured in United States. Then in France, let us imagine they will take up the production of labor abundant inputs, and labor intensive products are produced in France. Okay. So now the owners of this capital resources, United States, will experience an increase in the purchasing power of their rental income. Means all those capital owners, the industrialists, they start producing this capital intensive goods by utilizing their capital, and in return to this capital they will gain an income. We can call this income as a rental income, okay, which is being paid on utilizing these machineries. And while the workers who are working in this US economy, their purchasing power, utilizing them into the production activities, will decline, and they will lose their income, wage income. So there will be a loss for those workers in the United States where they are in less demand. Similarly, in France, in France, in order to produce the commodities, they use labor intensive techniques. They use more labor to produce a commodity. So, because of this, the workers will gain more profit and they will be given more wages to them. Obviously, the capital owners who are existing in France, so their demand is reduced and obviously they will lose the market. So, there is a loss for capital owners in France. I hope that with this explanation you understood about what the Stupler and Samuelson would like to make us to understand in this theorem. Okay. Now let us look into the next factor. The country is getting benefited regardless of the fact that if a country has more, whether here we can understand one thing, the country is getting benefited with its abundance, factor abundance. If a country has more capital, if the country has abundant capital, it gets more benefits on capital side. If the country has more laborers, by engaging more laborers into production activities, the country gains more profit and it will be and the laborers will be paid more wages. Okay. So thus in United States of America, the capital owners would get more benefit from the trade happening between two countries, even if the capital is used in the declining import competing sector. So what it means? If the country is trying to substitute the import commodities, if the imagine the United States is importing some labor intensive commodities, if the country tries to substitute by using capital intensive techniques to produce in their own country, to substitute that labor intensive commodities, but still the country will be in a greater benefit. Similarly, the laborers who are working in this industry, the laborers in the US, they will be losing their importance even if they are being employed in export sector. If export sector is expanding in US, but the wages won't get the benefit out of it because the America is using capital intensive techniques to increase the production. Okay, so all those workers, their wages will be less because they're less in demand, and all those capital owners will gain more profit. So this the reason for this result, you may find it a little complicated. Let us understand how is it so, why is it so. So when a country moves to a free trade, the price of its exported goods will rise, while the price of the imported goods will fall. The higher the prices in the export industry will inspire profit-seeking firms to expand production. At the same time, import competing industries suffering from falling prices will want to reduce the production to cut its losses. Yes, obviously. So when there is a free trade happens between two countries, a country will start exporting those commodities. And as it starts exporting the commodities, it tries to hold on the goods and commodities what it exports. And as the prices of these export commodities goes on increasing, obviously there is a profit which is gain on two aspects. One on international trade aspects. The second is all those factor inputs which are used in this producing this export goods. As you are aware that in America, the export goods, the goods which are exported are capital intensive goods. More capital is used. As the price of these commodities increases, there will be more demand for capital goods, and the capital owners will gain the profit. Okay. So here, at the same time, if country wants to substitute the import commodities, it tries to utilize the available laborers for producing those import substitution goods, but still the wages won't rise. The wages for the laborers won't rise, because you can see that only because the factory, because those commodities which are produced in order to substitute for import, their prices is not rising. There is a fall in price. As there is a fall in price, obviously you can see the fall in the price of wages of the laborers. So what this theorem says is, this theorem clearly says that if the prices of the commodities which are exported, if the prices are increasing, so now the prices are increasing on those export commodities, and let us look into the factor inputs. If these commodities are produced using capital intensive techniques, if a country is using capital intensive techniques, means obviously there will be a capitalist who has invested on plants and machineries, and he will be getting more profit, and here more rent is paid to the capitalist for utilizing this capital goods. Okay, so there is a profit for capitalist if capital intensive goods are exported in more in quantity and if the prices increases. Okay, and vice versa. Let us take the France. In France, the goods which are exported to US, they are labor intensive goods, and as the exports increases, the price of these commodities will also increase. As the prices increases, since the France is using labor intensive techniques to produce these commodities, all those wages paid to the laborers will obviously increase, and the gain in the wages of the laborers in future, and they will be paid more. And if at all the available capital, if the country start utilizing it to substitute the import, though they are substituting the import by using these capital machineries to produce those capital goods, but the prices of import goods is falling. Import substitution goods falls, and the price of this capital will decline. So this is what we can understand from this theorem. So now let us understand the capital. Say the capital. This means that export industry wants relatively, any export industry wants relatively more capital per worker than the ratio of factor that the import competing industry is laying off. In the transition, there will be an excess demand for capital which will bid up its price, and excess supply of labor which will bid down its prices. Hence, the capital owners in both industries experience an increase in their rents, while the workers in both industries experience a decline in their wages. So this is about Stoupless-Samuelson theorem. So let us understand a theorem once again in a well manner. So I would like to summarize about this theorem. What this theorem, Stoupless-Samuelson theorem, will states that this theorem states that the relationship between change in the output prices, that is the price of the goods which are exported, if the prices increases, automatically the prices of those commodities which were utilized in producing these commodities, the factor input prices will also increase. Okay. So meanwhile, if the prices of output prices of those commodities decreases, automatically the factor input prices will also decreases. Okay, I hope that you understood this theorem. Just go through this theorem once at your side, read through it. If you have any doubt, please comment in the comment box. I'll reply to your queries. Okay, so now we'll move on to the another theorem, that is Rybinski theorem. Rybinski theorem. The Rybinski theorem. What is this Rybinski theorem? Economist Rybinski has postulated this theorem. Let us understand what this theorem states about. This theorem demonstrates the relation between change in national factor endowments and change in the output of final goods within which the context of Heckscher-Ohlin model. So they take up the context of the inputs, the variable inputs, and Heckscher-Ohlin model. And you know that you know the context of Heckscher-Ohlin model. What Heckscher-Ohlin model says that Heckscher-Ohlin model, in that we discuss about that a country will try to export the commodities, only those commodities where the country has abundant factors. If the country has more capital intensive goods will be exported. If a country has more labor, it will export labor intensive commodities. So with this context, let us try to understand this Rybinski theorem. So it says that an increase in countries, it says that an increase in the country's endowment of a factor will cause an increase in the output of the good that uses that factor intensively, and a decrease in the output of other good. Okay, so what you might like to say is, if a country start utilizing according to the reasons, all this, see, I would like to tell you one thing, all these three theorems what we going to study today, whether it may be a Rybinski theorem or Stupler-Samuelson theorem, these two theorems, so all these theorems are supportive to Heckscher-Ohlin theorem. All they talk about factor abundant. Okay, so you may find the theorems are similar. Okay, so now let us understand what this theorem states about. This theorem states that if there is an increase in the country's endowment of a factor, means imagine that there is one factor which is available in more quantity and there is an increase in this factor, maybe a capital, maybe a labor input. If it is available and it's increasing, the factors which are available in that country is in abundant quantity, it's increasing. So what happens, automatically the output of that goods which uses these factors intensively into the production, obviously the production has to increase, and obviously the other factors which are being used for producing the commodity, any commodity, so there the demand for these factors will automatically decline. So in other words, what it says, let us take this example. If the United States experiences an increase in capital equipment, then that would cause an increase in output of capital intensive good, and automatically there will be a decrease in output of labor intensive goods. Okay, so you understood what they are trying to tell. In US, if there are two commodities which are been produced, steel and clothing. Steel and clothing. In order to manufacture steel, the US utilizes capital equipment, and there is a increase in capital equipment which will increase the output of capital intensive good, that is the steel. Because since there is an increase in production of this steel in the country, which will have an negative impact on cloth manufacturing industry, and there is a decrease in clothing. And in this clothing industry, they are using labor intensive goods. So obviously the demand for laborers will decline. Okay. This theorem is useful in addressing issues such as investment, population growth. And hence the labor force, the growth, it also discusses about the labor force growth. When the labor force growth will increase, immigration, emigration, all within the context of Heckscher and Olin model. So this theorem was also generalized by Ronald Jones, who constructed a magnification effect of quantities in context of Heckscher-Olin model. The magnification effect allows for analysis of any change in both endowments and provides information about the magnitude of the effects on the outputs of two goods. I hope that you understood this theory. It is a very simple and easiest theory. Definitely, I hope that you would have understood these two theories. And if you have any queries about these two theories, you can just send me a message, and I am going to write to your queries. Okay. So now let us take some. So now we'll try to have a discussion on another theory, the theory of second best. In the next So now in the next session, the next video, I'm going to discuss about theory of second best. Now to this point, I'm going to I'm going to end this session by giving this explanation of these two theorems, and I want you students to go through with this a textbook which I asked you to download. In this, you can just find these two theories from page number 190 189 to 204. You can find this in page number 189 to 206. You can find these two theorems. Okay. Thank you. Hope you can hear me. Today I'm going to take class on international trade and policy. Good afternoon, everyone. Students, hope you can hear me. Today I'm going to take class on international trade and policy. Students, hope you can hear me. Today I'm going to take